Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Laura, and today we're going to be doing a building tips and tricks video. So we're going to start off simple with Control-Shift-C, and we type in bb.moveObjectsOn. Now, I apologise if I go a bit quick during the beginning, but we've got a lot to get through, so... obviously you can move items freely anyway without the cheats, but if you type in that cheat in the cheat bar, then you can put items in walls. Not that you would, but you can interlock items into different objects. Now, moving on, we're going to be typing in bb.showHiddenObjects and bb.showLiveEditObjects. Now, this cheat will unlock the option where you can type in debug in the search bar in the bottom left corner, and I usually select the bottom one because it brings you straight to base game items. You have a whole array of different items. These items are available in each world, but obviously not in build and buy mode. You can't, unfortunately, duplicate them. You have to individually click them each time, which does get quite frustrating if you've exited debug, but look how cute these items are, which you wouldn't have had otherwise, so it's definitely worth trying out that cheat if you haven't already. Now we move on to the Alt key. Now this gives you the ability to move items freely, and it's honestly one of the key cheats I use. You can also press the Alt key and the Shift key and it'll duplicate the items for you, and I find this highly useful, especially when doing landscaping, because it can take a very long time without that Shift key, and I've only recently discovered it off my friends The Sims days. So this will show you how you can toggle the grid on and off. You simply press the G key, which is also very useful for screenshots if I'm still in build and buy mode. Now, for example, we get a sofa and you can move it freely if you use the Alt key, and you use the scroll wheel in the center of your mouse and you can rotate the objects as you wish instead of simply moving them left to right or up and down. So now, I usually choose some sort of toy in my builds to make them a bit more lived in. You can use the scroll wheel to rotate your item, and now you can use those bracketed keys, not sure what the official name is, but it's on the screen, to size the item up or down. Now, I usually put, as I was saying, a toy on the sofa, and you can use the 9 key to go upwards, and if it's a bit too high you can use the 0 key to move back down, and again the scroll wheel to rotate if that is something you wish to do. So moving on, we're going to be creating a simple little house just so I can demonstrate different tips and tricks that I use when building. Usually a suburban house, let's be real, it's usually my thing. So I usually either draw on the walls, or you can use the room tool and you can drag it to size. This does get a bit easier when you're doing bigger builds. And if you want, you can simply copy it with that little 2 boxes or squares on the screen, or you can move it. The move one is very handy and something that I was thrilled to have in The Sims 4, because it's not something I had in The Sims 3, which is where I used to build a lot. So you can rotate the build, you can rotate the entire build, you can rotate a wall, and then you can also add platforms with this middle tool. I don't know what you'd call it, the arrows, but it's on the screen. I usually have the platform about this height. I don't do too tall, not too short, it's usually about this. So this is how I make my platforms. Not everyone does it this way, so there will be different techniques, but I usually just place the square platform and drag it into the shape I'd like. So now, when we're placing the steps, you can rotate them using these keys. Again, I don't know the official name, but the left and right keys. I really need to look these up before I start filming. So we have this little square in the corner of the steps, which you don't need, and it does cost a bit, so I usually delete that just to help you along the way. So this is a simple roofing tutorial. It's literally as simple as can be, but I'm filming this for anyone who's never built in The Sims before. So I do this simple roof, and then I add this next layer to the first story. Because it just adds that extra element of realism, I believe. So yes, I drag it down slightly, drag it across, and then I press that copy button again. So now you've got the roof in your hands, and you lift it up. So now it matches the other side, you can drag it in or out as you wish. And I usually pull it out in the back because it adds that extra realism. And sometimes I add like a decking or a porch type area to the back, but I chose not to for today. So now I added in this little roof in the front, so it gives you like an entryway then. I usually have a little bump out, which gives me that, help along the way to know what the house will look like eventually. So I also sometimes add in these extra bump outs in the roof. It's pretty simple. It seems more difficult than it is. So you just you just add the room tool, and then you add the simple roof on top of it. You can put things up there, but it does kind of go in between the roof, so you're kind of like in the roof in gameplay, but it is playable. Depending on how big the space is, but I usually use a ladder to go up there. So yeah. I add this roof trimming, usually the third one along is kind of my preference. And you can also add the room tool again to add to the bump outs at the back so that they add up to your preference. So I usually use this roofing paint colour because it makes everything stand out a bit better. So moving on to floor tiles, this is probably one of the more recent things that I've learnt. So as you can see, the wood grains are going upwards. Now if I'm making a house, I always like to have everything going sideways when it comes to floor tiles. So what you do, you zoom in and use those arrow keys to turn the wood a different direction. Now it does mean that you have to drag it, which can get frustrating with bigger spaces, but then you have the wood going left to right instead of up and down. I should start saying horizontally and vertically, but that'll take me too long. So now you can add simple fencing to your decking. You just press that little icon at the bottom there, this glowing green. I don't tend to use this really, I draw it on myself, which is kind of silly because it's a waste of time. And it's better to use the tools allocated for such things, but there we are, moving on. So now I'm adding the columns, and I always call them pillars, so if I ever say that, you know what I mean. I usually use that move button, because I usually misplace them the first go. So you can press the move button if you do misplace an item. So that definitely helps, because my builds would be all over the place if we didn't have these tools. So next up, I'm going to be making a little room on the inside just to demonstrate how you can use different floor tiles. Now, this is for angled floor tiles. It's not something I use very often, but it is good to know about in case the occasion ever does come up where you do need to use them. So yes, so we select any type of floor tile. We'll just use this one for an example. Now you can place it as a square, of course, but now you might have this angle that you think, oh well, I want a half tile there, and if you place a wall there, it will automatically be a half tile. However, if you've got an open space as such, and you want to have it across diagonally on that line, you simply press Control F, and it'll turn the tile into a half tile. If you'd like to create a certain type of pattern, again, I don't do this very often, but it is good to know, you can do it with different types of tiles. So you can create fun patterns like this, which is quite a cute idea, I think. Now next up we're going to type in debug in the search bar again in the bottom left corner, and we're going to find this fencing. This is one of my favourite fences to use in the game as a debug item. So obviously you can press the Alt key and move the item freely, and you can add different posts at the end of the fencing. But I mainly like to use the fence on the roof. Now it may sound strange, but it's like an extra roof detail. You can use the 9 key and the 0 key to move up and down. It does take a bit of fiddling around, as you'll see here, because it all depends where you start off from. And also it will never go flush to the end of the roof unless you like really struggle, but I usually just give up. Once I got to this point, it's good enough. So, as I'm demonstrated, it is very frustrating to try and get straight, so I usually end up going above the roof after I've already lifted it up with the 9 key and lowering it down with the 0 key. So, we will get there eventually, I promise. But isn't it so pretty? It's definitely worth the struggle. Now, next up, we're going to be using different type of plants in landscaping. I usually use this little, what would you call it? It's not grass, it's not really a plant, but this extra greenery then we'll go with, to add some detail to the front of the houses. Now, you press the Alt key and the Shift key to duplicate an item. This comes in very handy when doing these type of plants, otherwise it would take me so long to create these builds. Now we go to the terrain tool and we decide what type of pathway we'd like. So we can have it really big, which obviously wouldn't work at all, so I size it down correctly and I place the terrain where I would like my designated path. So next we go to dirt and sand, and I always choose this type of dirt. We size that circle down and we just simply paint on the dirt. This adds that extra element of realism, which I really like about builds, and it makes it more lived in then. I'm all about making things look more lived in. That's why I add so much clutter and so many decorations, because it just adds so much to it, so yeah. So once we've finished that off, you can already tell it looks loads better, I hope. Next up, I go over to the search bar and I type in the word monkey to get the monkey bars to come up, but it always makes me laugh. So, I'm going to be showing you how I add that extra level of detail to back gardens and just play equipment or landscaping or anything as such. So, you go to the terrain tool again and I select the dirt. Now you can select how much of the terrain comes out in one go. You can either have it be so faint or it can be very bold, but I tend to use the middle one, which is where it's naturally set, to put in the dirt on the ends of the monkey bars. Now I tone it down a little bit going across, because obviously if kids are jumping down, that's what it would look like. So that is what I went with, and I hope that helps. Moving on, I'm going to be showing you simple window tips and tricks. You can place a window as such without using any types of cheats. However, if you press the Alt key, you can move the windows freely. Now, I tend not to do this because it does put everything a bit off central, and I like everything to be just so I tend not to do that. However, it's an option if you do wish to, so it's good to know about. So yeah, I usually use this key. I press the 9 key as we've used previously, or the 0 key to move back down. This is a new one that I've learned, so I thought I'd include it. So, say you want a door which is in the medium height, but you only have the short height on. So you can't click them without having the medium height selected. So we go back and we select the medium height. So now you've got all of these different door options. I personally really like the door from my wedding stories, so we're going to select that one. I'll choose the white one, of course, because everything I do is white. So now we've got our door, and we size it back down, and the door remains, which is miraculous. Now sometimes it does clip, as you can see, it does bump out slightly, but it's in a porch area, so it's fine. So next up, we're going to be talking about how to delete walls. As you can see, you can press the control key and drag the wall using the wall tool backwards. Now, I tend personally not to use this, and I just bulldoze it because that's what I've been doing for so long, but it's good to have both options there. Now, moving on, I'm going to be showing you how I do certain interior things for Build and Buy. So now we go over to the accessories of the bathroom. There's a new bathroom clutter kit, which I'm absolutely obsessed with, and Sims delightfully shared my post on their account when it first came out, which is wonderful. So now we use the 9 key to move upwards, as you can see, and we can rotate the item. I tend to do it slightly off the side when I'm lifting the item up so I can see just how high it's going, but if I'm in a rush I tend not to do that, but it does help a little bit. So now we're going to get a candle just to add that little element of detail, and we'll do the exact same thing, press the 9 key and rotate it using the Alt key. You can of course move it up higher or lower, but it fits perfectly there, so that's what we shall do. So moving on, we're going to go to surfaces, we're going to click on displays, and we're going to find something we want to put above the sink. Now we could put a simple shelf, you can move it as such, or again you press the 9 key and you've got a bit more creative freedom in what type of design you're going for. The shelf I usually tend to use in bathrooms, if we're doing bathrooms not kitchens, is this one. I just love it. It's from Tiny Living, I do believe. Isn't it just so perfect? And again, you can press the Alt key, move it freely, or press the 9 key. Next up, we move on to curtains and blinds. So this one frustrates me so much when building, so I thought I'd include it. So obviously you can use the keys, the bracket keys, to size things down. You usually can't press the 9 key to move items up unless you place it so specifically. So that's what I've shown you there, but it's a bit all over the place because even I struggle with it, so yeah, I thought I'd show you anyway because it might help. So moving on, this is for decorative pieces and more miscellaneous stuff. Say you want to place a lamp on a chest of drawers, so you can size the item up and down with the, I still don't know what the name is, but you know those keys I'm on about, the brackets, and you move it away from the wall and you use the Alt key and the scroll wheel on your mouse to rotate the item, and then you can place them freely, but you must place them on top of the item you've decided to use first so that it's at the correct height. And as you can see here, I've placed them at the wrong height, the wrong distance away from the wall because I couldn't see from that angle. Now I end up adding a nifty knitting rug, which is in the debug section, which is one of my favourites, so we shall see that in a moment. But we come to an end of my tutorial. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks guys, bye!